Hello, I'm Trella Fisher Corbin Ostrander, and I've lived in Mapleton for 86 years. So I know a few things about it. My favorite thoughts were back when we lived right up from the swimming pool. It was on Hill Street. And of course, where the swimming pool is at now was what we called the tennis field. And that's where we spent most of our time playing ball and anything you could think of. And the creek was nearby, so you know what we did there. We'd build little dams. And then at night, before dark, we would go over on the other street where the street light was. My Aunt Lillian Covert lived there, and a big gang of us, and we would have the most fun playing all kinds of games, like hopscotch before it got too dark, and I forget what else some of those games were that we played, but hide and seek, and it was hide-y-go back then, and we just had a wonderful time, and we knew what time we were to go home, and if we didn't, we'd hear the parents out on the back porch letting out a whistle, and so we hurried home. And then I will say that way back when, and then through the years, Mapleton was one of the nicest towns to raise your children. You felt safe to let them out. The neighbors would look after your children, and I would help with those that came into our place. So we had a really good time. And Reservoir Street, I remember my son Brian saying that every evening around 5:30, the kids gathered over there. Now, that would have been in more recent years, and have their playtimes, and you could just hear them yelling and just having a wonderful time. So, and I am blessed to tell you that we have had 3 wonderful churches in Mapleton. The attendance has dropped, but through our celebration here, I'm inviting everyone to think about it and come back to church. And then of course the swimming pool opened in 1949, and that gave us all a new lease on things. We didn't have to go to the dam or sneak into the reservoir for a dip, or go to the river, which we weren't allowed to do, but we went there a few times.
You remember that?
I do remember the gardens. In fact, my dad got a plot of land, plus our one at home, over at the sand plant. They allowed the guys to plant gardens over there. And that's where he planted the corn, and I forget what else, but the corn was the big thing. And then he would bring it home, and of course, Flick and Bob were over there. Dad would take them over to do the hoeing, but he said that the girls cut off too much, so he didn't want us over there. We knew how to get out of it. But I'll tell you what, when Dad brought that corn home, Hill Street was well fed with fresh corn. And he knew what kind it was, but I forget. But then we did have the gardens at home, and my mother had, of course, the horseradish, and every April we would grind that on the back porch, and the tears would be running down everybody's faces. And and she always had lots of rhubarb. And by the way, Dad used to have 2 pigs that we kept, and one was Dynamite and Sparkplug was the other name. So they were our pets. Can you believe that? And we just had a wonderful time growing up in Mapleton, and so many wonderful friends. As a teenager, can you believe it? I was in 2 class plays, Tri-High Y, the science club, all these clubs at school, and we were to meet in the evenings. Of course, my dad didn't have the money for gas to run me to Mount Union every night. So we would gather at Newt Parker's store. And of course, we always could rely on Dean McCarty. Dean would come up from Mount Union to date Mary, and so if he always stopped in at Newt's to see if anybody needed a ride, even though he wasn't going back down. There was usually Glenn Coder and Barry Corbin and Dick Price and myself that was in some of the same clubs. And he had a carload of kids going to Mount Union. And Lord knows how we got home, I don't remember. But we sure had a good time at school. And I relish those days and the friends I made there also. We used to go, everybody loved Newt's place, you know. But I remember that Mother would send me down to Weibel's store with a note, and I would get the things that she had on the note usually, and they would charge it. And then when Dad got paid, we would get down there, or sometimes I took his check down and got it cashed and paid the bill. And I remember that we always got a treat. They gave us a bag of candy to take home. And then I also remember Trapp's store, and I remember a little ice cream shop that was next to Newt's, to the left of Newt's from the road, but I don't recall the name of it. And and Mrs. Gilbert, or there was Gilbert's store and Mrs. Snyder's store, which was right here. In fact, I'm probably sitting in it. And then, I remember when the post office was down there along the creek. And another thing was the band hall. During our centennial in 1966, we really used that hall for a lot of entertainment during the centennial, but prior to that, you know, it was used for movies and dances. And we really had a wonderful time there. And it was just turned into a building for about everything that we used in town.